And before we get started with the eyebrow procedure, there are some very important things to go over first. The most important are measuring and shaping the eyebrows so that you're sure to get the eyebrows even and symmetrical and a nice shape prior to making any permanent marks. So the first thing we want to do, there are some basic guidelines and rules of thumb as far as measuring eyebrows to get an appropriate shape. The first is you would want to measure along the edge of your client's nose, along the side of the outside of the nose, up to the corner of the eye, and that's about where you would want the eyebrows to start. Coming in too close would make them look, like a unibrow, too close together. Starting too far back would make them look much too far apart. You don't want that look. So the rule of thumb is best to follow is the side of the nose, up along the corner of the eye. I usually make a little mark there. And second measuring that you want to do is you go along, start at the center of your client's lip, measure a line from the center of the lip, going along to the corner of the eye, extend it straight past that. That's where you would want the eyebrow to end. You don't want the eyebrow coming down too long. That makes this area look a little bit too heavy. Making it too short obviously doesn't look right. You want the eyebrow to extend in more or less a straight line. You don't want to come angling straight down. The idea is to give the illusion of a lift. You don't want the eyebrows looking heavy, like they're weighing the eyes down. You want a nice straight line, like an illusion of an eye lift and an open area. The third measurement that you want to make is to determine where the arch should be. A good rule of thumb to follow is to measure along the side of the iris, the colored portion of your client's eye. Measure along the iris straight up. That's about where the arch should be. That would put it along the last third of the eyebrow. Now what I generally do is sketch. You'll see in the video I make a sketch of an eyebrow, and measuring can take quite some time. Once you've gotten a rough outline of where you want your eyebrow to begin and end and where you would like the arch to be, then it's a matter of getting the two sides even and symmetrical. So what I do at that point, once I've sketched in one eyebrow, I will measure from the beginning of the brow all the way over to the end and mark that on a long stick Q-tip. Then I will come over to the other side and make sure that the brows are the equal length. I will also measure from the corner, the outside corner of my client's eye to where I have drawn the end of the eyebrow. I'll measure that on both sides. You want the eyebrows to be the same length and the same distance from the corner of the eye. Then I will measure so that the top of the arch is the same distance from the eyelid. So even though everyone's face is obviously very asymmetrical, you still want the eyebrows to be a fairly equal length, equal distance from the corner of the eye, and you want the arch to be about the same height from the eyelid. Once you've got those measurements made, then it's time to start doing the eyebrow procedure. And as you'll see in the video, I don't color the eyebrows in like a solid filled in pencil line. I actually make the FeatherStroke brows, which look like little hairs. They look very soft and very natural. Now just to refresh a little bit, we're taking our needle, we're going through the epidermis down into the dermis. The skin's got three layers. The top layer is the epidermis, middle is the dermis, bottom layer is subcutaneous tissue. The epidermis is the part of the skin that you see and feel. The tissue, the cells are actually dead. They will all eventually slough off. Placing pigment in that layer, you will find that the pigment doesn't last. Your client will come back and say, I have no pigment left. That's because it's all been in the epidermis. It is sloughed off. You want to get the probe down into the dermis. the middle layer of the skin. This layer produces the skin cells, but these skin cells, this layer stays here. This layer does not slough off. Going too deep, you get into the subcutaneous tissue. I've put X's along here. You've gone too deep. If you go down in the subcutaneous tissue, that can be a problem. That can cause scarring. Now, when we do the procedure, it's a little bit hard to see, but I want to draw this picture so you can have a picture in your mind of actually what I'm doing. I will hold the probe, and it's actually a sweeping motion. You will sweep the probe down into the skin, breaking the surface of the skin, down into the dermis and back up. And you want to do it as a continuous sweeping motion. You don't want to stop in the middle or at the end. You don't want to go too slow and stop. That will allow the pigment to actually create a little bit of a blob, for lack of a better word. It will make a blob mark. You want a continuous sweeping motion so it actually looks like a single straight line here. Now, when you're drawing the eyebrows, you see I've drawn a couple of patterns here. We can have more of a rounded, natural inner corner of the eyebrow, or we can have kind of a more dramatic, angled, a sharper angle for the corner of the eyebrow. Now, this can be accomplished with the hair strokes. There's a technique to give the appearance of these two different types of eyebrows. So I just kind of want to go over that with you and show you how to make the continuous sweeping motion so that you actually get a look of a hair. When we want an eyebrow with more of a rounded corner, you can see that we're making a little shorter straight line, then a little bit longer, and a little bit longer. We're getting continuously a little bit longer for these first 3 to 4 strokes. That gives the appearance of a little bit of a rounded inner corner of the eyebrow. Once we get those first 3 or 4 strokes done, then we'll start making shorter hairs along the bottom. We're staying within our pattern, starting right where the pattern starts and continuing to the inner part of the pattern. And we just continue making these lines. You can see the first few hairs of the eyebrows stick straight up like a natural eyebrow does. These front hairs generally are a little bit taller and straighter. Then as we work our way in, the hairs start to grow more of an angle. Once I get about halfway across the bottom, then I'll come back and I'll start working on the hairs that will make the top part of the eyebrow. And so we curve them just so slightly, and I come up just a little bit above the pattern. As you can see, the hairs are not perpendicular. They're at about a 20 to 25 degree angle compared to our pattern. You don't want to come up perfectly straight, because that would look like the hairs just stick straight up all the way across the eyebrow. That's not a very natural look. So we'll continue filling the eyebrow in. Once we get down to the tail, we really want it to taper down for a nice, even, tapered, natural look. So generally, the row along the bottom edge of the eyebrow will stop before the end of the eyebrow. Like that. You don't want to fill it in so that the bottom part of the eyebrow looks too heavy and too thick down here toward the end. Then, as you can see, once I do that, There's usually a little bit of a gap. Shorter strokes here in the beginning, the front of the eyebrow. You can give the appearance of a little bit more of a rounded, softer, round beginning. And then you can see as I've filled in and outlined along the top, and I've outlined along the bottom, that leaves a little bit of a gap here in the middle. So what I do is I just go back in and fill that in. And you don't really want the hairs exactly touching, you want them very close together, but not exactly touching, otherwise it would look like just a bunch of continuous lines. You want it to actually look more like hairs. So then we end up with something that looks roughly like this, and I know it's a little bit hard to see exactly what I'm doing in the video because I'm working on such a small area, so I wanted to kind of give you a better visual representation of what I'm doing. Now for an eyebrow that somebody wants a little bit more of a dramatic, more angled look, you would start still with a continuous sweeping motion, start at the bottom and go all the way to the top. So you're making much longer strokes here right in the beginning. It's a little bit more of a contemporary, more dramatic, but same idea. The first few strokes start down in the corner and they come with one single sweeping motion all the way to the top. It's to again make those first few hairs stick straight up, and then you'd start angling and working your way across the bottom of your eyebrow pattern. Then once you get up about halfway to 2/3 of the way across the bottom, then you come back, start working on the top, and same thing. The hairs would extend just slightly above the pattern, maybe a millimeter, not much more than that, maybe 2. Actually about 1 millimeter would be good. At about 20-degree angle. You don't want it too flat. You don't want the eyebrow hair, they won't look like hairs if they're too flat and going directly along the eyebrow pattern. So you want them to extend just slightly above at a very slight angle. So that kind of gives you a larger representation of what you'll be seeing when I'm actually doing the eyebrow procedure. So now that I've shown you my technique, let's go get our client ready and proceed with the FeatherStroke eyebrow procedure. So we're going to do your eyebrows today. And when you pencil in your brows, what color do you generally use?
Brown.
Okay.
Medium brown.
A medium? What we'll do is take a look at a couple of different colors actually. Take a peek.
Okay. That's pretty close to.
Okay. That's actually my light brown.
Okay.
I think medium might be a little bit too dark to start with.
Okay.
If in a month when you come back, if it's not quite dark enough, I can darken anything, but I can't go backwards very easily.
Sure.
So yeah, I think that would be a good place to start. My next lighter color is a blonde, which is pretty light.
Okay.
I don't know if it would give you the color that you want.
Contrast.
You go ahead and hang on to that because we'll use it when we're looking at our pattern. Okay. So what we'll do is clean both areas really well. Now when you pencil in, do you follow your natural brow shape, or do you maybe add a little bit more of an arch?
I try to add a little bit more of an arch.
Okay.
Just because I don't feel as though I've shaped mine well enough to where there's enough of an arch.
Okay.
So as much as my artistic ability will allow.
Okay. So now we're going to draw with my ugly pattern pen. So this color means nothing, it's just so I can see it.
Okay.
Look straight. What I'm measuring here is just trying to make the brows as even as possible. They're never going to be exactly the same.
Even up my unevenness.
That everybody's uneven. Just try to get them the same length and the arch at the same height and the ends. Okay, I'm going to let you take a peek. And remember, we're just looking at shape, not my ugly color.
Okay. I think we're good.
So it just gives a little arch, a little more of an arch. I think that looks nice.
I think we're good. Yeah.
Take a peek.
The pen is a little strong.
It is. It's not a good color. Try using. Okay. Go ahead and turn your head back and forth about this speed. Okay, and look straight. And tuck your chin down. Can I get you to hold your... There you go. And look straight again. Yeah, I think that's a pair.
Great.
So does that look like a shape that you like? And
It does.
even and symmetrical to you?
It does.
Okay.
I think it looks nice.
Yeah, it adds just enough of an arch to give the illusion of a little bit of a lift, but nothing too dramatic.
Perfect.
Okay. Well, now we will we'll go ahead and recline the chair back and get you nice and numb, and we'll start the procedure.
Sounds great.
Okay. I'm going to start first on your left eyebrow.
Okay.
What I'm using here is just a standard rotary machine with a 3-flat needle.
And about how long does it take for each eyebrow?
It's not a real long procedure. It takes about 20 to 25 minutes. Doing okay?
I am.
So what we're doing here is just one little hair stroke at a time, staying within the pattern that we drew. And what I usually do is outline the whole pattern first. That way I don't accidentally wipe any of the pattern away before I've had a chance to outline it. Now that we've outlined everything, we can wipe off what's on the surface and kind of see what we have left underneath. So what we're doing here is just one little hair stroke at a time, staying within the pattern that we drew. And what I usually do is outline the whole pattern first. That way I don't accidentally wipe any of the pattern away before I've had a chance to outline it.
anything, you can wipe off what's on the surface and kind of see what we have left underneath. And you can see, I'm not sure if you can see with the camera, but we've got the outline of where our little feather strokes will be. Now we just need to go back over them to darken them and fill them in.
And if you like, I'll zoom in now.
Sure.
Okay.
Looking very good.
good. Okay, that side is done.
That was pretty quick.
Yeah, it takes the longest to draw the pattern. Okay. I don't know if you can zoom in on that. So your skin turned a little bit red. That's perfectly normal.
Okay.
It'll probably stay red for a couple of hours after the procedure.
Now, is there anything that helps with the redness?
I'll put a cold mask on and some aloe before you leave.
Okay.
The feather strokes looks just like little hairs in there. Now the pigment's a little bit dark, and it'll be dark for the next 4 or 5 days. But once it softens, it's going to be really close to the natural color of your eyebrow. It'll just look fuller and have a nice little arch. Doing okay?
I am. It's actually not
bad?
not bad.
Good. You doing okay?
I am. It's actually not
bad?
not bad.
Good.
certain angles that the strokes that you do makes more of a glove shot again. Let's see what
Okay.
this angle will do. Let's-
zoom in close and see how nice and natural that looks. One little spot and I hope it done the that side. Okay.
Okay, hold on just a second.
Okay.
What do you think?
I think it looks very nice. Go ahead and take a peek.
Oh, well, it does. It looks really good. Looks
So-
more natural than I thought that it would look. I guess it's hard with the pen, but
Yeah.
wow, it looks really good.
So you can see you got a little bit red,
Expected.
maybe more than some people, but and a little bit puffy, but that will all go away over the, probably by tomorrow.
Okay.
Shouldn't be anything left tomorrow. Even though it's a little bit dark now, it's not.
No, it's
So
not.
scary.
Right. It's not as dark
So-
as I thought that it would be, so I think it'll be perfect.
Yeah, once it all settles in, it'll be, you won't even be able to tell that they're tattooed on. Perfect. That's the whole idea.
Exactly.
Okay, very good.